A beautiful American girl trapped in an ancient temple. A terrifying figure with green eyes and sharp fangs hunts her through shifting corridors. Panic sets in, walls close, statues whisper, and reality bends. Just as she's cornered, a mysterious warrior from the past appears, wielding sacred fire. Action erupts, the creature vanishes, but the fear lingers. Why was she chosen? Who is the Watcher? This story unravels time, legend, and terror buried deep beneath history. Expect tension, mystery, and a clash between darkness and the last light of hope. As ancient powers awaken, only one thing is certain: no one leaves unchanged. I didn't believe in curses. Not really. I was a surgical nurse, trained in sterile fields and scientific fact. But that changed the night I was pulled back to a place no map remembers, into stone halls older than any record. I'm Devin, I'm 27, born in Seattle, and none of this is in the textbooks. It started in Arizona. I was volunteering at a dig site outside of Tucson, part of a medical outreach program. We were assisting researchers catalog ancient burial structures once tied to the forgotten Zemeckis civilization. That night I was assigned to check on a local man who'd collapsed near the ruins. His name was Exhale. He couldn't speak, eyes wide, skin clammy, like he'd seen something his body couldn't process. While treating him in the makeshift tent, the lights went out. Just a flicker, then total black. Then came the noise, low humming, rhythmic, like stone grinding against stone. I felt it more than heard it. Before I could reach the lantern, Exhale stood, his eyes rolled back. He gripped my wrist hard and whispered one word: Nahual. The tent vanished. I wasn't in Arizona anymore. I stood barefoot in a hall lit by fire sconces, walls carved in jade, symbols pulsing faintly. The air was humid, thick. I heard drums in the distance and distant chanting. I smelled incense and something metallic. The silence between heartbeats was heavier than sound. A woman approached me, young, maybe my age, pale skin, long blonde hair tangled with leaves. Her name was Callie. She said she'd been pulled here 2 days ago while hiking. She spoke in short, panicked bursts. There was no exit, she said. The rooms changed, the corridors shifted. We were in the temple of Chaltepec, a forgotten war king who had once ruled these lands with fear and bloodless rituals. Then we saw him, or it, the man with no name, but we called him the Watcher. 7 feet tall, cloak of faded red, skin too smooth, face too symmetrical except for the jaw, broken, hanging slightly left. And those eyes, green like poison under moonlight, 2 long teeth visible even when his mouth was closed. He watched from the archway, unmoving, then vanished. We tried to run. The temple didn't allow it. Stairs turned into walls, water dripped upward. We passed an old courtyard where statues whispered when we turned our backs. That's where we met Jareth. He wasn't from our time. A warrior, maybe 1200s. He spoke Nahuatl but enough English to understand us. He'd been trapped for years. He carried markings on his arms, burned-in glyphs meant to ward off spirits. He didn't trust us at first, especially me. Said women brought storms here, but he protected us when the shadows moved. He was the only one the Watcher wouldn't approach. Callie and I slept in turns. At night, we'd hear scratching along the stone. Sometimes drums, sometimes crying. Once I heard my own voice whispering from the cracks. It told me to give in, to stop walking, that I was meant to stay. On the 5th day, the corridor lit green. Jareth said the altar was calling. We had to confront it. I didn't know what that meant. The path was narrow. Carvings of creatures with mouths open too wide lined the walls. At the center of the final chamber was a slab of obsidian. The Watcher stood behind it. Callie froze. Her body went rigid. He called her by a name that wasn't hers. Said she'd worn another face once, that she broke his reign long ago. Now he wanted balance, to take back what was stolen. Jareth moved first, grabbing a torch and shouting something guttural. The flame struck the slab. The Watcher let out a sound I'll never forget, like wind breaking through bone. Everything collapsed. I woke in the hospital tent, flat on the cot. Exhale was gone, Callie too, no records of them. My boots were covered in dirt I didn't recognize. The jade pendant Jareth wore now lay in my palm. Warm, humming. I transferred out a week later. I don't go near ruins. I don't sleep without a nightlight. And sometimes in dreams, I hear drums from somewhere far below. I never thought I'd find myself believing in something like curses. My name is Devin. I'm 27, a surgical nurse from Seattle, and my world has always been about facts and clean lines. But none of that prepared me for what happened in the deserts of New Mexico, near an excavation site tied to an ancient civilization that history barely remembers. I was there volunteering with a medical team, helping out researchers catalog remains from the Chimaltec people, whose influence stretched back to nearly 400 BCE. The day was typical, filled with dust and dry heat, until I was called to check on a man named Emiliano. He was a local guide who had suddenly collapsed near the dig site, pale and trembling, unable to explain what had overwhelmed him. We brought him to the shaded tent where I was stationed. As I examined him, the air shifted, thickening in a way I couldn't explain. Then the power cut out, the lanterns dimmed, and a low, almost mechanical hum filled the silence. Emiliano's eyes rolled back as he gripped my arm, his voice barely audible as he said one word, Tonatiuh. Suddenly, the tent dissolved. I found myself standing barefoot on cold stone floors, surrounded by towering walls carved with strange swirling patterns. The air was humid, heavy with the scent of burning copal and earth. From somewhere deep inside the temple, a distant drumbeat echoed in steady rhythm. A woman stepped forward. Her name was Maya. She looked as lost as I felt, pale with dark hair braided and woven with feathers. She told me she had been trapped here for days after hiking the trails around the ruins. The temple was alive, she said, shifting and twisting like a living thing. Escape was impossible. We soon realized we were not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked in tattered indigo robes, his face smooth but cracked like old stone. We called him the Sentinel. His eyes were a piercing amber, unsettling in their calm. He watched us without blinking, then vanished into the darkness before we could react. The corridors began to warp. Stairs became walls, and hallways turned back on themselves. We stumbled into a courtyard where statues seemed to breathe, their eyes flickering, as if aware of our presence. In the courtyard, we met Tomas, a man who claimed to have lived centuries ago. His skin was marked with faded symbols, inked into his arms in patterns that glowed faintly. Tomas spoke a language we barely understood, but explained that the temple was a prison of sorts, a place where souls were caught between time, held by ancient rituals of the Chimaltec. He warned us that the Sentinel was more than a guardian. He was a judge who decided who could leave and who would remain. Tomas didn't trust me at first, blaming outsiders for the temple's unrest, but he stood by us when the shadows moved closer. Nights were the worst. Maya and I took turns watching while Tomas slept. Strange noises came from the walls, scratches, whispers, and sometimes a soft cry that sounded almost human. Once I heard my own name called out from the darkness, a voice both familiar and terrifying. It told me to stop fighting, to stay forever. I wanted to run, but the temple's hold was strong. On the seventh day, Tomas said the time had come to face the heart of the temple, the Chamber of the Sun. We moved through narrow tunnels lined with carvings of creatures with impossible shapes. The chamber was dominated by a massive stone slab, black as night and smooth as glass. The sentinel stood behind it, watching silently. Maya suddenly stiffened. The sentinel spoke to her in a language that felt ancient and final. He called her by a name I didn't recognize and said she had once walked these halls as a queen who disrupted the temple's balance. Now, the sentinel wanted to restore what was lost. Tomas stepped forward, chanting words that vibrated through the stone. Flames burst from torches along the walls, casting long shadows that danced and writhed. The sentinel emitted a sound like wind tearing through bone, and the chamber trembled. The floor cracked beneath us. Then, everything went black. I woke back in the tent, sweat soaking my clothes, heart pounding as if I had run a marathon. Emiliano was gone, and Maya and Tomas had vanished without a trace. My boots were muddy, stained with soil unlike anything I'd ever seen. Clutched in my hand was a small sun-shaped amulet Tomas had worn, warm and humming softly. I left the dig site soon after, unwilling to go near the ruins again. The nights are restless. I hear the drums still, faint beneath the hum of the city. Sometimes I catch myself staring at the amulet, feeling like it's alive, waiting. There's a silence inside me now where certainty once lived, a space filled with questions and shadows. I don't know what I experienced, if it was real or a dream, but I know this. Some places keep their secrets, and some stories never end. I thought I had left the past behind when I walked away from the dig site near Santa Fe. My name is Devin, 27, a nurse who believes in science and clear answers. But something from those ancient ruins didn't let me go. Months later, I found myself drawn to a small museum on the edge of town where artifacts from the Anahuac civilization were displayed. They dated back as far as 1200 BCE, a culture that once thrived in the American Southwest. I wasn't supposed to be there after what I'd been through, but curiosity gnawed at me. Inside, I met Aaron, a historian with sharp eyes and quiet manners. He was researching the symbols on the jade amulet I still carried, the one Tomas had given me. Aaron spoke carefully about the Anahuac, a people who believed the sun was a living spirit and that certain places were gateways between worlds. The amulet, he said, was a key, but a dangerous one. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of it felt heavier. I heard faint murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere, words I couldn't place but somehow understood. The next morning, at the cafe where I met with friends, I noticed a woman staring at me. Her name was Elena, a local artist with deep ties to the land. She mentioned hearing strange noises near the old ruins and said something about dreams where the past and present merged. We talked late into the afternoon, and I felt an unspoken urgency in her words. Later, I walked through the desert toward the place where I'd last seen Tomas. The sun was dipping low, painting the rocks with blood-red hues. The wind carried whispers that sounded like old songs. That's when I saw him, Lucas, a man with a weathered face and calm eyes. He said he was a descendant of the Anahuac, someone who had been guarding their stories for generations. Lucas warned me that the temple's power was awakening again. He said the sentinel was not just a guardian, but a keeper of balance, and that by carrying the amulet, I had shifted something unseen. I wanted to doubt, to turn away, but a sudden chill ran through me. The desert seemed to breathe around us. That night, at my small apartment, the shadows seemed to move with intention. The walls whispered names I didn't know, but they felt familiar. The amulet pulsed against my skin, its warmth growing. I tried to sleep, but the line between waking and dreaming blurred. In dreams, I walked endless corridors, chased by the sentinel's amber eyes. Days passed, and I found myself pulled back to the museum. Elena joined me, her eyes wide with worry. Together with Aaron, we uncovered an ancient map hidden beneath a floor tile, one that revealed a secret chamber beneath the temple. This chamber, the writing suggested, held the source of the temple's power and the key to its release. We planned to explore it, but the closer we got, the more the air thickened with something heavy and old. Elena said the wind carried warnings. At the entrance, carvings shifted subtly, like watching us. Inside, the walls pulsed with faint light, and the scent of copal filled the air once more. Our footsteps echoed endlessly as we descended. Then came a low hum that vibrated through the stone beneath our feet. The sentinel appeared at the chamber's edge, calm and unreadable. Aaron stepped forward, speaking words that seemed to ease the tension, but the sentinel's gaze shifted to me. I felt exposed, as if he saw through to the part of me tangled in this mystery. The amulet grew hot, almost unbearable. Then, the chamber brightened, revealing images of Anahuac life, festivals, sun worship, a people bound by nature and spirit. The sentinel gestured toward a carved basin in the center. Water inside shimmered with an unnatural glow. Elena touched it gently, and a rush of visions flooded our minds. Times long passed, moments suspended between life and death. When the visions faded, the sentinel was gone. The chamber was still. We left with a quiet understanding that the temple was not a prison, but a threshold. The past was not lost. It lived beneath us, waiting for those who dared to listen. Back in my apartment, the amulet was cool again, but I knew the balance had shifted. I still hear the drum beats, softer now, as if inviting me back. The temple's secret was part of me, woven into my days and dreams. Sometimes I wonder if some stories choose us, rather than the other way around. And maybe, just maybe, the real journey is learning how to carry them without losing ourselves. I never expected an ordinary visit to my uncle's ranch in New Mexico to pull me into something ancient and strange. My name is Maya, and I came seeking quiet, away from the chaos of city life. Instead, I found a story buried deep beneath the desert sands, one that reached back to a civilization lost between 1200 and 400 BCE. Uncle Tomas was always full of stories, but one evening, his voice dropped low as he spoke of the Chimal people, an ancient culture who believed the earth itself held memories. He showed me an old clay tablet engraved with symbols I couldn't understand. Then, just as the sun dipped beyond the horizon, a strange chill crept over us both. The next day I met Ezra at the local market, a quiet man who sold handmade pottery. He recognized the tablet immediately and warned me about the Veil of Shadows, a mysterious force that the Chimal feared. Ezra said the veil separated the living from forgotten spirits, but lately, the boundary had been weakening. That night, strange things began. My dreams were invaded by flickering shadows and soft voices whispering in a language older than time. I would wake with a pounding heart, the tablet warm against my skin. My mind raced, questioning if this was exhaustion or something far more unsettling. In the days that followed, Elena, a curious journalist, joined me. She had her own reason for wanting answers. Her grandmother once spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the desert that held the key to the Chimal's power. Together, we explored the dry riverbeds where strange stones lay half-buried, symbols matching those on the tablet. As we ventured deeper, the wind changed. It carried a melody so faint it seemed almost a dream. In a narrow canyon, we found carvings glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ezra appeared suddenly, warning us that the veil was thinning faster than anyone expected. He urged caution, but the pull was too strong. That night, a restless energy filled the air. My small room felt colder, and shadows danced at the edges of my vision. I heard footsteps outside, though no one was there. The tablet's warmth grew unbearable, and I realized the veil was not just a legend, it was breaking. We returned to the canyon with Ezra and Elena, prepared to uncover the truth. The walls seemed to pulse as we approached a hidden entrance. Inside, the air was thick with history and something unspoken. A glowing pool lay at the center, reflecting not just our faces, but distant moments from the past. As I touched the water, a vision overtook me. Ancient Chimal people celebrating beneath a crimson sky, voices rising in song and prayer. But the joy was tinged with urgency, a plea to protect what was sacred. I felt their fear and hope as if it were my own. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. The veil flickered between worlds, revealing glimpses of shadowy figures watching silently. Ezra whispered that these were guardians, bound to keep balance. The tablet pulsed one last time before going cold. We left the chamber forever changed. The veil had not fully lifted, but something had shifted. The desert held its secrets close, and so did we. At night, I still feel the faint pulse of the ancient world beneath my skin, a reminder that some histories are never truly gone. Life went on, but the memory lingered, a quiet echo in the wind and the soft glow of the stars. The Chimal's story had become part of mine, woven with questions that would follow me for years. Some doors once opened do not easily close. I arrived in the small town of Arroyo Verde to visit my childhood friend Marcus, hoping to escape the rush of city life for a while. Marcus had recently uncovered fragments of an ancient civilization buried beneath the surrounding hills, dating back more than 2 millennia. We spent afternoons hiking where the land whispered secrets, the wind brushing over stones etched with strange symbols no one quite understood. One evening, as dusk settled, Marcus told me about a legend passed down by the native elders. It spoke of a hidden portal that linked their world to another, an invisible veil guarding something older than time itself. I was skeptical but felt a chill settle over the quiet desert air. Across from us, the silhouette of a woman named Amaya appeared, drawn by the same mystery. Amaya worked at the local museum and had studied the symbols for years. She believed they marked places where spirits lingered, places where the past refused to stay buried. That night, under a sky heavy with stars, the 3 of us gathered near a cave where Marcus had found an unusual carving. The air was thick, almost pulsing with something unseen. At first, nothing happened, just the soft rustle of wind through dry brush. Then faint whispers echoed around us, barely audible but unmistakably there. I glanced at Amaya and Marcus, their faces tight with a mixture of awe and unease. We stayed rooted in place as a shimmering light shimmered along the cave's mouth. Days passed, and the strange sensations grew stronger. I began to see fleeting shadows at the edge of my vision, hear soft footsteps when no one was near. One afternoon, while exploring with Marcus, we found a set of stone pillars arranged in a pattern matching the stars above. The ground beneath them felt oddly warm, alive with something ancient. Amaya arrived just as the sun began to dip below the horizon. She traced her fingers over the carvings, whispering words in a language lost to time. Suddenly, the earth trembled faintly, and a soft glow emerged from the pillars. Fear and wonder collided inside me. What had we disturbed? That night, alone in my room, I could not shake the feeling of being watched. A light flickered by my window, pulsing like a heartbeat. Sleep eluded me as shadows crept closer, forming shapes I couldn't explain. I clutched a small charm Marcus had given me, a token from the ancient people. The next morning, Amaya brought news of a new discovery, an underground chamber hidden beneath the hills, untouched for centuries. We gathered there at dusk, flashlights cutting through the darkness as we descended narrow stone steps. The air was cool and thick with the scent of earth and history. Inside, walls were covered in paintings telling stories of a people who communed with spirits and guarded a sacred secret. At the center lay a basin filled with clear water that reflected more than just our faces. It was as if the surface held memories, flickering scenes from a distant past. Marcus knelt by the basin, his breath catching as images swirled, rituals of light and shadow, of life and loss, moments frozen in time. Then the chamber shifted. Sounds of the desert faded into an eerie silence. We were no longer alone. A figure appeared, translucent but unmistakably human, eyes filled with calm and sorrow. Amaya whispered that this was a guardian of the veil, a protector of the balance between worlds. The apparition reached out, and I felt a cold brush against my skin, a connection older than words. The vision faded, leaving us shaken yet strangely comforted. The veil remained, a fragile boundary that could be crossed, but at a cost. We left the chamber carrying the weight of a story too vast for one lifetime. Since then, the desert seems different, more alive, watching. I sometimes catch myself staring into the night, feeling the pull of that ancient place. The memories of the past mingle with the present, a reminder that some mysteries are never fully solved, only lived alongside. The story of the lost civilization became part of us, a quiet echo in the wind and stars, urging us to listen carefully to what lies beneath the surface of the everyday world.